You're listening to Breaking Biz Dev with John Tyerman and Mark Wainwright. Conversations that break down, beat up, and redefine business development for the professional services firms of tomorrow. And now for your hosts, John and Mark.
Thanks to everyone for joining us today. We just thought we'd check in.
Yeah. So what are we beating up today, Mark?
We're gonna beat up checking in, John. We're gonna beat up checking in. That leads to that nasty thing called ghosting, and then hopefully towards the end of the conversation, we're going to have this little helper, this little bit of information that if you find yourself in that strange world of ghosting after you've just checked in. Hopefully we're going to provide a little bit of help with that. So here we are. Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Yeah, I'm really excited about this today because we were talking about this topic a few weeks ago, checking in, ghosting, and the magic email. It's in the title of this episode, and I took that piece of advice and I went out and I applied the magic email to some folks in my sales pipeline where I was getting ghosted a little bit. And it's funny. So this is my one thing for our intro segment here. I used that email and I heard back from 2 opportunities in my pipeline that were ghosting me. So that was pretty cool. It had been a few months. One said, "Oh yeah, I'm just so busy. I totally lost track of time. Yeah, let's pick up the conversation." And then the other said, there's a major industry shift. It's been all hands on deck, but when the time comes for a podcast, you're the first person that I'm going to reach out to. So I thought that was really cool that after months of ghosting, that email was able to get a response.
Good. So it worked. And yes, we're going to tease a little bit here at the beginning, but we'll get into it. So I think everyone will really appreciate this. One thing that's happening for me right now, I started working with a new client, which is always
congratulations.
Fun. And when I reflect on, thank you. When I reflect on the conversations that I had leading up to this new engagement, there was a really a real energy, a good momentum, a good pace, a good back and forth. There wasn't any random odd checking in. There wasn't any ghosting. So I never had to use the magic email. It was fantastic. I would point to it as a great example of truly a 1 + 1 is 3 kind of series of conversations that led to an engagement. So I was excited about it. So I can really reflect on the ones that have been a total disaster and reflect on this current new one, which I think went quite well, and it's starting off well.
Well, it sounds like that you were in that magic section of the quadrant where you had a good buyer, a good seller, so it all moved and it all flowed. That's awesome.
I agree.
Well, you didn't have to use checking in or the magic email, but let's beat it up. I'm sure I've used the checking in. I've caught myself doing that handfuls of times and dozens of times. So yeah, let's get into it.
I've done it too. I have done it too, and sheepishly, I'm thinking that everyone out there who is involved in that wonderful BD thing has used it as well, right? So the checking in, email, telephone call, voicemail, whatever it might be, right, is the useless, I'm just checking in communication that produces absolutely zero results. And John, I'm certain that you've got some examples in your head.
Well,
about this.
Yeah, my marketing brain immediately turns on because over email, you get the preview line of text, right? And so when the salespeople reach out and they say, "I'm just checking in," because then it just ... Well, don't tell me you're checking in. I can see that it's in my inbox. Just tell me, what do you get to the point, man?
Right. Get to the point. Great. Get to the point. Exactly. We use it all the time. I've used it, and I have to sometimes physically restrain myself from using it because it's easy. It's really, really easy if you're wondering about if you're just checking in with a recent a professional contact you've had that you check in with every year, every 6 months, whatever the cadence is. Maybe there's no cadence. Uh, you just send them hey, I'm just checking in email, and it doesn't have a lot of value, and there's no purpose, and there's no goal, there's no plan, there's none of that. So in it, and you don't get a response.
Checking in, it's more like checking the box.
Right. What other circumstances do you see people using checking in emails?
Well, I see it when there's a directive from, maybe it's the managing partner, maybe it's the founding member of the firm. We need more leads. We need more revenue. So let's shake the tree, right? Where's the low hanging fruit? Go out and check in with some past contacts. That's the context that's the first scenario that pops into my mind.
Totally. You are absolutely right on that one. I have seen it when you've got a proposal out there in the ether. It's sitting in someone's inbox, and you invoke the, "Hey, I'm just checking in about that proposal. Let me know when you'd like to review it, talk about it, whatever. How's it going?" That type of a useless check-in that happens. So that's checking in, right? And I'm certain that the vast majority of people out there who are in any way connected with generating new business, new leads, have any number of examples of the checking in email sitting in their sent, inbox, their sent folder in Outlook right now. So any and all of you can pull up terrible examples of the useless checking in.
I just went to my Gmail inbox and just typed in checking in, and I see all of these different sales emails that are popping up that are using, "Hey, John, just checking in."
There it is. There it is. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Right. So here's let's tie this checking in thing up in a nice little bow, right?
Let's do it.
Checking in doesn't produce the results you want because it offers no value. It is not specific. There's very little direction in it, and it often, just lets an ambiguous situation just continue to persist, just to continue to be ambiguous with no next steps, with no consequences, no finality, no decision making, whatever. It just sort of lets the status quo maintain the status quo, right? It doesn't have any power, or energy or sort of focus behind it, right? So it does not achieve the desired results that you want it to achieve.
And that can lead to being stuck in purgatory, right?
Right. Which is ghosting.
Oh, the hamster wheel of ghosting.
Right. So this lame checking in, purposeless checking in with no direction, no focus, leads to the hamster wheel of ghosting, which is something that you wrote down, John, as we were taking notes about this episode. Tell me about your experiences with the hamster wheel of ghosting.
I've experienced it both as a buyer and admittedly I've ghosted a few salespeople, and it happens, right? I've experienced it as someone who's selling agency services to other companies. I've experienced ghosting when I was in the job market looking for a job, and recruiters would ghost me, and that's just the worst, honestly. That is just the absolute worst. But yeah, so I've been on all kinds of ends of ghosting. So yeah.
I have as well. And like you, I have experienced both sides of it. When someone is trying to check in with me, or when I haven't handled a series of conversations properly, I haven't structured the interactions in a way that is going to prompt a response where we've been clear about what's happening next, etc. So all this random checking in leads to this nasty hamster wheel of ghosting, and we've come up with a handful of things that we think can get rid of, or at least eliminate the use of this random checking in email that leads to ghosting, right? And one of them, the first one that comes to mind for me, is that your organization needs to have a way that you go about selling your services, right? You need to have an intentional process that keeps the conversation going, that helps build energy, builds momentum, and eliminates or radically reduces the amount of miscommunication or ghosting, so that these new opportunities that are happening, these conversations that are happening between two individuals, have a nice flow, right? They're each conversation builds on one another, and we reduce the possibility of ghosting, which is terrible.
Energy, momentum, and focus. I like those as characteristics of your process and what you're trying to maintain. Because the more that I think about it, the more that when a salesperson checks in and they check in multiple times, hey, I'm checking in. Hey, following up, I didn't hear back from you. Hey, checking in again. Do you hate me? And it's like the emotion. My emotional response to that is, am I a bad person? Like, am I doing something wrong? And
Right.
that's not a good sales tactic, right? Because as a salesperson, you want your buyer to be empowered. You want them to feel good, not bad, right?
Right. And I use the term focus in a specific way. It is both parties want to continue to focus on whatever you're working towards, right? Whatever this desired outcome what outcome is, whatever these results are, that is the most important focus point. So that's what you want to focus on, and you want to maintain energy and momentum on both sides of the conversation, that you're working towards these desired results, these outcomes, that this vision they have in the future of some desired future state, and it's going to take some work to get there, but you're there. You're going to be able to achieve this together if you focus on it. So you want to stay focused on these outcomes and these desired results. That's super important. So the other thing that helps prevent this hamster wheel of ghosting is really setting clear next steps in your interactions. Sandler, which is a pretty well known sales training group out there, they have some good stuff. Sandler has developed something that is fairly well known across the world of sales, which, John, by the way, our BD friends may not be aware of at all, because we don't like the word sales.
It's a dirty word.
BD. It's a dirty word. Sandler has something they developed called an upfront contract, which I would say is one of the best bits and pieces of their methodology, their approach. The upfront contract, and this is Sandler's sort of methodology. The upfront contract includes a handful of elements. One is the purpose of the meeting, this next conversation. One is an agenda, simple agenda. The next one is shared expectations of both parties. What should we both be expecting to happen in this conversation? Logistics, date, time, etc. Just let's make sure our wires aren't crossed on this. And desired outcomes. What do we both want to get out of this next conversation, right? So that brings some structure to an often ambiguous, meaningless interaction that can lead to ghosting, because if you get off the Zoom call with someone, or hang up the telephone, and you think, well, shoot, what were we going to do next, and what was the I didn't get much value out of that. Like, it wasn't a very productive conversation. It didn't seem like we got anywhere. That's going to lead to ghosting, right? That's gonna get you there. And that last little bit about setting next steps is so important. Sometimes it can feel a little awkward in the moment. That last 5 minutes of the conversation, you think, you're thinking in your head, you're thinking, what are we going to do next? But maybe the exact moment doesn't quite present itself in the conversation, and you fail to set next steps because you're feeling a little awkward. This feeling starts welling up in your belly. And I will tell you, as soon as I end that conversation and I don't have a next step set, the feeling in my belly is tenfold what it was otherwise. It was, we didn't set a next step. We don't know what we're doing. I'm sure you felt that.
Oh yeah. And I've learned that the hard way. And that's why I always, if I ever field a sales call, I always reserve that last 5 minutes. Okay, let's talk about next steps. Let's pull up calendars. Let's find a time that works for both of us. I'm going to take this information back. I'm going to work on a solution. We'll review that solution on our next call. Things like that. But yeah, failing to do that, and I've learned that the hard way, and losing out on opportunities because of it. So,
right,
yeah, it's critical.
Yeah, it is. It's and you shouldn't set next steps in a way that let's use the word salesy, right? That you're just setting a next step so that it feels like it's benefiting one party, right? If what you're trying to do in the conversation is, if you're the consultant and you're trying to sell a solution, a service to a potential buyer, setting a next step shouldn't be a check the checkbox activity. Setting the next step is, look, you want to move towards this solution, right? The resolution of whatever it is, of whatever needs that you have. You want to be able to solve that. And I think in the conversations that we had so far, we can do that together. I think it seems like we can help. Let's keep this going, right? Let's continue moving in the right direction rather than just letting it fall into, the world of ambiguity, and then comes the hamster wheel of ghosting, and then there's trouble. So setting that next step is super important. It benefits everybody in the party.
Well, it's a tricky balance, especially for consultants and folks that deal with expertise as part of their offering, because you got to balance how much are you giving away during the sales process versus how much do you need to withhold. So, like, how would you strike that balance in a sales conversation?
Right. Ghosting can also happen when you've shown up at the first call and you've shown all your cards.
Yeah.
That's a poker reference, right? But if you're the consultant and you are thinking, oh, wow, I really want to work with these folks. You're firing off pricing. You're talking about how you're going to scope the work. You're throwing off all these possibilities. You're like, well, you can approach it this way, or we can do it this way, or we can do it that way. You're throwing out a bunch of information, which, withholding information in these conversations is bad. Just outright withholding information is bad. However, sharing information, sharing expertise needs to be done in a really intentional, deliberate way, and it needs to move as the conversation progresses. So I guess the point there is that if you show up at the first conversation and you give them everything they're looking for right off the bat, right, you're going to get ghosted because you haven't really understood this concept of leverage, right? Leverage needs to be balanced. Both parties have something the other party wants, right? If you're a consultant, you have expertise that the potential buyer wants. The potential buyer hopefully has resources that they can compensate you with, right? And those two things need to kind of move together and be in balance as the conversation progresses, right? Or, you throw everything out there to the potential buyer, to your prospect on call one, you're going to get ghosted, right?
I forget if it was, I was listening to him speak or if I was interviewing him on one of my past podcasts, but David C. Baker says that there are two flavors of expertise. There's generalized expertise and then there's applied expertise. And it sounds like, just based on this conversation, Mark, that generalized expertise is something that you can package up in your marketing, in your webinars and your podcasts, talking about, in general, here's what you should do. Whereas applied expertise, you really need to understand your prospects. You really need to understand your audience and the pain points that they're going through on an individual level, on a firm level. So it sounds like, and how we apply that to this ghosting, this hamster wheel of ghosting, is if you don't take the time necessarily to understand the nuances of what the challenge is, what are the pain points, what does it mean to that prospect in particular, then you may risk firing off a solution that may not be a good fit. And so you may get to that too early when you haven't taken the time to understand how maybe a slight tweaks to your solution would have a much higher value to them.
Excellent. I love that. So what's our one possible little solution to this, John?
Well, you mentioned something, Mark, about a magic email. I'm just dying to hear about this. And so are our listeners. What is this magic email?
They are the magic email. So I do not own the magic email. There is no little trademark after the magic email that's associated with me. This has been used for a while. It has been used in by various individuals. I've seen it used, by marketing agencies, by people who are involved in the buying and selling of all different types of things. But in this case, we're talking to professional services firms, so we're talking about people selling their expertise. It works. It works fantastically well. So there are a couple really important things before we get to it that the magic email sort of invokes. Right. The first thing is the magic email is the way that hopefully the either the parties or just the seller separates themselves emotionally from this new project, from this new opportunity. A lot of times we get really deeply involved in this, right? So it's we start to take things personally, and the ghosting really hurts us, etc. So the first thing is this separates us emotionally from whatever the outcome might be. The second thing that it does is it creates this sense of loss, which is associated with the cognitive bias loss aversion in the buyer, right? It creates a sense of loss through the sort of, all right, I'm walking away, connotation in the email. So those are two really powerful things. It separates us, and it creates this potential sense of loss from the buyer, where it prompts them to respond.
So do you have an example of
I do.
a magic email?
I do. And there are some slight variations to the magic email, but the majority of the magic emails that I have seen out there go something like this. The subject line is closing the loop. And here's the body. Dear John, I haven't heard back from you regarding our potential work together. I'm assuming that you've gone a different direction or that your priorities have changed. Please let me know if I can be of assistance in the future. Best, Mark.
I haven't heard back from you regarding our potential work together. So let's break that sentence down.
So you're getting ghosted, right? That's the ghosting. That's happening. Communications have broken down. Maybe it was something that it was a fault of yours that you weren't doing a good job setting next steps. But either way, communications have fallen down. There was something. There was a conversation that was happening, and things have things have stopped. People may have just gotten distracted, but and again, this is all true. Priorities may have shifted, et cetera. But communication stopped for some reason.
And so this magic email labels that. You're saying, okay, I'm calling a spade a spade. Our communication has stopped. Haven't heard back from you. Okay, so the next sentence, I'm assuming that you've gone a different direction or that your priorities have changed. Let's break that one down.
Yeah, that's again, it's straightforward, right? It's straightforward. We were talking about something specific, a need that you have. I got the sense that it was a pressing need. It was associated with important business results, something that you have going on right now, some big change that you have in place, some new direction, whatever it is. There's something important going on, and it sounds from all indications that has changed. Or maybe you found someone else that's going to fit your needs better, right? So okay, all right. I'm assuming that there's a reason behind this.
So you're kind of leading up to this last sentence. Please let me know if I can be of assistance in the future. And I guess this kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about loss aversion. You're saying I'm walking away. I can be assistance in the future.
Yeah, and this says I am totally okay with this. Just let me know. You know where I am, and I'm walking away, and that's it.
You got this silver bullet of an email. So give me the context. When should salespeople fire off this magic email?
Three points, I think, about the magic email, right? You need to use it with someone with whom you've developed a relationship, right? There have been some communications. There's been some back and forth. There's been some conversations where you've developed some level of trust and rapport. You've moved through your sales process to some degree, right? So there needs to be a there, right? This is not something to use where you got some random email lead that dropped into your inbox that said, "Hey, we might be able to do something with you," and then it vaporizes, right? There's no connection there, right? We're not going to, used in the wrong situation, we're not going to be able to invoke that sense of loss. So there needs to be a relationship that exists. The second thing is, just like you said there, John, you can only use it once. You can only use this once. So that says, oh, there's a particular moment in time. It needs to be used in a strategic way in the conversation. You can't just fire this off, right? This is, to use some, not a big gun person, John, but right, you've got one bullet left, right? You got one left, right? And then the last point I want to make is that you have to be prepared, from a business standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, to honor this. Right? If you say you're going to walk away, you walk away. Right? This isn't going to be the third step in your sort of prospecting sequence where you're like, all right, I'm going to send the magic email, then 2 weeks later I'm going to check in with them again. Right? No, you can't. Right? The magic email is it. That's it.
I've seen this email used in like a newsletter format. So I subscribe to a newsletter, and if I don't open the email after like the last 5 editions, then I get this automated response. Hey, John, notice that you're not engaging with our emails. Maybe something happened, but I'm going to take you off my list. And so it's like, oh, well, maybe I don't want to miss out on these emails. I'm going to go back and I'm going to open the next few so that I can, retain my subscription to that email newsletter.
Exactly. And that's an excellent example from a marketing perspective, which would fall probably more on the ones and twos end of our marketing and sales continuum, right? On the other end, in the fives end, this is, you are in a sales process. You have been ghosted, right? This is not you are kidding yourself to think that this thing is going to go anywhere. So you need to call it. Right. And I will tell you, John, from my personal experience, and I have no data written down on a complicated spreadsheet in front of me, but I would say over 90% of the time, this works. And what I mean by works is it doesn't always, it doesn't lead to a contract, but what it does is it reignites the conversation, right? It says, okay, all right, let's not kid each other anymore. They get back to you. They're like, oh, sorry. And then suddenly you are in a position where you can say, hey, let's not kid each other anymore. Okay. We cannot deal with this ghosting, right? We have to keep this moving, or we have to end it. Okay. So do you want to have another conversation? Then typically they say, yeah, absolutely. So you get that going. So it will not guarantee a contract. It does, however, with a very high level of probability, lead to a next conversation, which is what we want.
That's the goal of sales, is to have conversations, plural, not just chasing the one conversation. Okay, Mark, so we talked about how checking in can lead to ghosting. You lose energy, you lose momentum, you lose focus. And if there is a relationship built, you can use this magic email to just get back on the tracks, reestablish that energy, reestablish that momentum, reestablish that focus, or bring clarity to an opportunity that you should close out of your pipeline.
Right.
Excellent. Well, this has been a great conversation, Mark. I'm sure that our listeners have gotten a ton of value out of this. I'm willing to bet that some of our listeners, our proactive ones, are going to go out and they're going to go in their sales pipeline and they're going to fire off this magic email.
I hope so. And if used properly, I hope that it reinvigorates the conversation and lets the consultants know that they can actually control this situation. They can be the ones saying, "Look, this isn't going to work for either of us. Let's just call it." Right? It's empowering. I really believe it is.
Take back the power. Take back the process.
Very good. Well, John, this has been good.
Yeah, and until next time.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Biz Dev. Subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or listen to the show at breakingbizdev.com. This episode was produced by Red Cedar Marketing. If you think a business podcast is right for your company, visit redcedarmarketing.com to learn more.